housing, and I'll leave it to you guys.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ahmed. So good morning, everyone. As Ahmed said, I'm Mohamed Zouari. I'm from Tunisia, based in Paris, and managing Middle East Africa, so it's a good mix. Today we will talk with Duncan about the unique value proposition of Snowflake, not only in the data warehouse space, but in the data platform space, and we will explain what is the data platform from a Snowflake point of view. So, today, every company needs to be a data-driven company. This is something we hear everywhere, in all the media, every time we are speaking to companies like Pegasus, etc. You see also data is the new oil. This is something we see everywhere also, but the problem is that legacy analytics technology is failing. We look to the Gartner recent researchers, and Gartner says that all big data projects that were launched in the past 5 years are still in the data lab stage, okay? And worse than that, 75% of those projects are failing. And they are failing for different reasons. They are failing from complexity. The first answer to the big data was Hadoop platforms. If you know Hadoop platforms, these are complex platforms, open source, up to 27 connected tools, with a lot of administration, migration, different languages, rare resources to manage them. So very complex, and this is why it's failing today. Second kind of problem is that everybody used to use on-premise solutions, and on-premise cannot scale affordably. We saw the slide from Ahmed on the exponential amount of data we are handling today. We can say today that we are creating each year more data than all the data you created from the humanity beginning. So when you use fixed tools, fixed resources, fixed appliances at a time or another, you will have some issues. And the idea of those on-premise solutions in the first was to say, okay, I will shift and left my Oracle database, my SQL Server, etc., to the cloud. But this is also failing. This is resolving maybe 20% of the problems, but just moves the remaining problems to the cloud, and you'll have exactly the same issues. So why go SaaS now? Software as a service today is really a model which is proven, okay? All of you know about Salesforce. Maybe some of you know about ServiceNow or Workday. These companies are software SaaS companies existing for 10 years now, and they completely disrupted the CRM market for Salesforce, the ITSM market for ServiceNow, and the HR market for Workday. So today we can say that the SaaS model is mature and secure. We have customers saying that they feel more comfortable with their data in the cloud than in its own data center, because there is a lot of security aspects that exists within AWS, within Azure, within Google, that you cannot afford internally in your own data center. SaaS is scalable and also flexible. So you can have this unlimited way of usage of the cloud, and you can be flexible, and you will be paying exactly what you use. And also, as a service, which is the AAS from SaaS, means you are consuming a service, okay? You are not building platforms, managing them, wasting time in order to upgrade, patch, etc. You are just consuming a service, so you have low maintenance, and your teams can focus on the real services, the real business use cases for the company. So why Snowflake? The answer is very simple. In fact, Snowflake, in one word, is the only cloud-agnostic SaaS vendor for data warehousing and for data platform. So first of all, we have a cloud-agnostic layer, okay? So you can use Snowflake on Azure, on AWS, or on Google. This is very important because you all worked with companies like SAP, Oracle, HP, BMC, CA, etc. And what companies hate is to be locked in one vendor, okay? So this is something that is happening now with the cloud vendors. So Microsoft is trying to have customers having full stack on Azure, Google the same on GCP, etc. So when you choose something like Snowflake on the data side, you can start on Azure, tomorrow move to AWS, or doing some replication in real time between two of those cloud vendors. Second thing is that the main issue when you are handling with data and analytics is that data is everywhere. So we centralize in Snowflake all your data. Wherever you will use them now or not, so we are acting like a data lake, you can put all your data independently from the data sources. It can be ERPs, CRMs, your own applications, IoT devices, social media, e-commerce platforms, etc. And all of this will be put in a centralized way. This is very important in order to be able to execute all the use cases you want, because you will not lose time to prepare the data, to look for the data sources, etc. You will just define what is the dashboard you want, what is the data science algorithm you want, and the data you can be sure that it is already here in this space. The second thing is that we have a compute layer, of course, to execute your queries. When you execute a Looker dashboard or when you execute some data science with Alteryx, you need some compute to execute all of this. And this compute in Snowflake is totally available in a flexible way, elastic way, and limited way given by the cloud providers. And you can isolate all your workloads. Meaning, some of you today for sure will limit themselves and not load data anytime in the day because it will impact the performance of the BI users. Or some of you cannot execute complex data science algorithms for predictive analytics, scoring, etc., because it will crash down the BI server, etc. So using this architecture with isolated workload will unlock your potential. So we have customers having more than 100 compute nodes for different purposes, so different business units, different technical tasks, analytics, data science, etc. And what makes the magic happen in Snowflake is that we have a service layer making us a pure SaaS provider. So if you want to understand Snowflake in a completely simple way, is you load data, you query data. All the other remaining tasks are managed by Snowflake. You don't have administration, you don't have any single task of migration, patching, backup, replication, etc. Everything is managed automatically by the software. We don't have people within Azure or AWS or Google Cloud managing the software. It was designed, built in the cloud in a way that is automatically optimized, automatically secured, and automatically managed. So the output with Snowflake is that you can deliver scalable cloud analytics, okay? So first of all, as I said, we bring all the data in one place. This is very important. And then all your business units, your sales and marketing, your supply chain, etc., can use the capacity given by Snowflake in order to have the reports and the data science algorithms, etc., without impacting any other business units. Third thing is that we provide capacity on demand, okay? When you stay on premise, you have a fixed amount of capacity, and you cannot handle some peaks, you cannot handle some new use cases, etc. With Snowflake, all is on demand, and all is on pay-per-use model. And even per second pay-per-use model. We will charge you as soon as you are using Snowflake, executing computing, per second. So it's really optimized in terms of cost. And finally, it supports teams of all sizes. So as you said in the previous slide or on this scalability part, you can, in fact, at the end, for big companies, for each business unit, have a chargeback model. Because you will see exactly what is used by which business unit and which task. So we have today almost 3,000 customers in the world after 3 years and a half of existence of the company. We have very big names like financial institutions like Capital One or JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, etc. Adobe, Sony, Sainsbury, and most of them today is a migration from legacy systems that were a blocker for those companies to handle the new use cases on data, and they migrate successfully to Snowflake. So, just to tell you a little bit the story of Snowflake, it's important to understand the positioning of the product today. In 2012, there were two big streams emerging in the market. The big data from one side and the public cloud from the other side. And all of the existing companies like Oracle, Microsoft, etc. Started thinking about what I will do with my databases. Do I need to migrate them to the cloud? Do I need to create something from scratch, etc.? So we have three founders. Two of those three founders were chief architects of the data warehouse of Oracle. They've been 15 years working in the Silicon Valley. And they were part of this internal program in Oracle thinking about what we need to do with this big data stream and this public cloud stream. And the conclusion of the management team is that we just shift and left our Exadata data warehouse to the cloud. And the conclusion of the engineering team and of those two guys is no, it will only solve part of the problem. You need to create a new platform built for the cloud, not designed in the 80s for the old world, but designed in the cloud for the new world and for the next 30 years. So their project was not accepted, so they left the company because they were convinced of their product. They found the first investors, they developed the product, which was GA early 2015. And we, until now, are the only and unique data warehouse built in the cloud. So we were launched on AWS. In 2017, we were launched on Azure, and we also provided a very interesting new way of data sharing in the market. So we will talk about it with Duncan later, and we will show it in a demo this afternoon also. In 2018, so after 3 years, we were already leaders in Gartner and Forrester, which is very important after 3 years of existence. And we will rename ourselves a data platform built for the cloud. And this year, we announced many new things. So we will be on Google in a few days. We are already on Google in private preview for some customers, but it will be public in a few days. So cloud agnostic, as I said. We announced a marketplace for data sharing, which is called Data Exchange. We will talk about it later. And we announced and we integrated automatically in the product also the global replication, meaning you can have your Snowflake running in one region, in one cloud provider, and instantly replicate it on another region and even on another cloud provider. And all of this managed by Snowflake automatically. So for your reliability about the data, you can have the maximum of reliability using Snowflake. So as I said, leader in Gartner after 3 years of existence. Leader in the Forrester Cloud Data Warehouse space, and Forrester even issued last year a report, which is an independent report, on the ROI you can get from a tool like Snowflake coming from other different on-premise tools. And I can send this report later. It's about more than 600% ROI. It was an analysis on 100 customers around the world. Very important also, we have internal, I would say, policies within Snowflake, and number one is put customers first. And this is something that is also visible in the last Dresner advisory report. All our customers are really happy using Snowflake. So they are 100% satisfied with what Snowflake is issued as an enabler for data analytics, BI, and data science, but also in the relationship with the customer support. And last but not least, I don't know if you know about the NPS, which is the Net Promoter Score. This is something where we measure, I would say, the awareness and the happiness of the solution in the market around the internet. Usually the technology vendors on average are around 21, we have a 71 score, which is comparable more to brands like BMW or Apple in the market. So this is very important for us, and we'll continue investing on it. So in terms of ecosystem, so this thing that you need to understand is that we are the engine in the middle, okay? So the slide that Ahmed showed, you have data sources. You need to ingest data in a data platform in a centralized way. This is Snowflake. And then you need to query with dashboards in Looker or with data science in Alteryx, etc. So the ecosystem is very important. We have native connectors for most of the tools existing in the market, okay? And we are relying as a platform on Microsoft and AWS and very soon Google publicly. And in terms of services also, we are very partner driven. So our partners are trained, are certified on the solution, and they migrate from the legacy systems to Snowflake, all our customers around the world. So what is the value? In few words, I will show the value for the chief data officer or for data teams, and the value for the CFO from a finance perspective. First of all, as I said, all your data in one place. So you don't worry about the storage in Snowflake. It's very cheap, and you can put all your data. If it is some gigabytes or some terabytes or some petabytes, it will be handled. And globally, around the world today, we are, for our customers, managing around 100 petabytes. It can scale elastically. So you can satisfy all your users, all the departments, all the business users, all the analytics, etc. will be satisfied because they will get the best performance and no limit on what they can execute as a data science algorithm for predictive analytics, for example. You will pay for what you use. This is very important. And I understand also in the Egyptian market after the devaluation, maybe price is important. You need to know that Snowflake prices are very cheap regarding the other solutions because you will pay per second exactly what you use. So we have customers consuming few dollars or few $100s per year, and we have customers consuming few $1 million per year because they are huge and they are doing all things around Snowflake. So it's adapted to all sizes and all verticals. And last thing is that with all of this, we can support all of your users. Just to give you an extreme example, our biggest customer in the world, which is a bank, Capital One, they have almost 400 plus concurrent users using the solution instantly on 10 petabytes of data and among 6,000 users globally. For the CFO part, as I said, the product is very interesting in terms of price. So you have here a comparison between Snowflake, the other cloud data warehouses, and the on-prem data warehouse in terms of storage. So the gap is huge. In terms of scalability, so you can save a lot of money because from the beginning and with the smallest compute power in Snowflake, you are 20, 40, 100 times better response times than Oracle, SQL Server, etc. So you're already saving money there. Near zero administration, we will see this with Duncan. So we have less maintenance. We've seen in some customers teams divided by 2 or by 3 when it is about data management and data warehouse management. And for small companies, they cannot afford to have someone dedicated to do this stuff. So if you have an on-premise solution, you need to maintain it, you need to administrate it, you need to install platforms, etc. With Snowflake, you focus on your business use cases, so you don't need to have any administration task. And finally, in terms of analytics, the best thing is in Snowflake is that we are enabling business use cases. So we have a lot of stories, we have a lot of customers' testimonies on our websites. I can tell you a story about Nike, for example. Nike is today centralizing all their data for all the stores around the world. And this is the starting point for all their supply chain, logistics, and manufacturing. So they analyze in real time which model of shoes is really adapted to this store and this store, depending on people coming to this store, okay? And then this have replication on all the supply chain, all the logistics, and it comes to the manufacturer and to the plants. And just putting this in music took them 1.5 years. They claim that they are saving, this is the Nike number, almost $270 million per quarter. So it's more than $1 billion per year. So it's huge. And you can just imagine whatever the scale of your enterprise is, all the impact of such a tool and of such a data platform. So this was my introduction. I will let Duncan now explain you the unique differentiators of Snowflake and why we are able to enable our customers with all of these savings and all of these business cases.
Thanks, Mohammed. This slide is next? Yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, so one of the biggest ways in which we're actually able to support all of the users is because in traditional systems, what you tend to see is people have to kind of like, they might have a data warehouse, but then they have to offload data into different data marts because they just can't support the volume of users they would like to in that centralized data warehouse. They have a capacity problem. And no one is willing to pay for ever bigger appliances just to be able to satisfy those peak user demands. So we use the power of the cloud to actually deliver this with a thing we call virtual warehouses. And what this lets us do is it lets us scale in 3 different ways. So the first is by isolating different user types and workloads. So one of the most common ways that people do this with Snowflake is they move all the loading data off to one side so that all the people querying data aren't affected. So you never have this kind of 9 o'clock in the morning problem where the overnight batch is still running and you have all your users trying to load their dashboards and everything just kind of grinds to a halt. We get rid of that completely by doing this isolation of these different types of workloads. The other thing we can do is we can scale up. So when you have queries that need to run faster on larger volumes of data, you can just instantly resize your virtual warehouse to be something bigger. Now, if you use other systems in this space, even ones that operate in the cloud, you'll find that that can take minutes or even longer to actually do that. Some of them have to unload all of the data, resize, reload all of the data, or they have limits on how they can resize. They can only go like up to twice as large or down to half the size. In Snowflake, you have none of those limitations, right? You can go from any size to any size, and 98% of requests to the service to resize are satisfied within 2 seconds. So you can actually rescale from any size to any size, usually within 2 seconds. It's completely separate in terms of the sizing. You might also see that my BI reporting has some little extra virtual warehouses behind it as well. So we also support this side-by-side scaling. So what this means is when I have lots and lots and lots of BI users, Snowflake automatically will spin up a second virtual warehouse and a third virtual warehouse, all the way up to 10, side by side, satisfying those user requests. And then when the query volume drops off, again, automatically, all of those will be shut down to save you guys money. We also charge by the second after the first minute for a warehouse. So we really want to make sure that you spend as little as possible on Snowflake to get the most possible value. So we can scale up to support these different users and different use cases. One thing that we've just recently launched, so we are always innovating and we're always driving new performance. We recognize it's a really interesting market that's very fast-paced, and we have to keep moving to maintain our position as the best cloud data warehouse. One of the things that we've done that actually is a pretty interesting capability, because most of the time when people look at other cloud solutions, they're tied to a single cloud provider. We run across multiple cloud providers, and actually we can do replication between them. So this lets our users either do it for availability, so if there's a problem or an outage of some kind, they can actually still get to all of their queries and all of their data. And some of them do it for recovery as well, or because they want to move query load into local jurisdictions. If you've got lots of users in Asia Pacific and you've got lots of users in Europe, if everyone's traffic is crossing the internet, it might take a long time, whereas if you are looking at a local replica, you're going to have less latency to get to your data. So you can do all those things, including across cloud, when you come to replication. So it's really great for people who want to have a multi-cloud strategy, or they want to be able to operate in more than one cloud vendor. We have great developer capabilities. So one of the things that's also really hard in the traditional on-prem world is you've got lots of people who want to do new things with data. They want to try out new ways of modeling. They want to try out adding things to databases or changing the way things work. Well, traditionally, if you wanted to be able to test, especially if you wanted to test on all of the data with representative query load, you'd have to have a whole second system just kind of sitting there most of the time and just used for testing and development, possibly costing you quite a lot of money to do that. Well, with Snowflake, because we have those virtual warehouses, I can spin up completely separate compute for my development use cases. But we also have zero-copy clones, and what this lets us do is do an instant cloning operation of any of your data, so you can clone a table all the way up through to a database if you want to do that. I can make as many changes as I like to my development copy of that data. It's going to have no effect on that production data. And I'm also only going to pay for the changes that I've made to data. So if I don't actually change things inside my database, there's no storage cost incurred. And that's even, even though we have one of the cheapest storage costs available at only, $24 per terabyte of data you store in the Snowflake service. So it's a pretty great kind of developer capability. It's really wonderful as well. If you want to just try new things out, you can clone stuff and get started with doing things differently. And we also support doing a swap operation on tables. So you can actually just kind of switch out with no downtime your new table with your old table that doesn't work the way you want it to anymore. When we talk about all your data, it's not just about the fact that we have cheap storage and thus you can actually scale us up to all of the data. It's about the types of data that we work with. So most people, when they think of data warehouses, they think of structured data. They think of things that sit inside tables, and they think of stuff that they're storing right now in a relational database system. We also support semi-structured data, so lots of new enterprise applications, lots of new web services are going to generate JSON data, for example. If you're working with other kind of data pipelines and systems, they might generate something like Avro, Parquet, or ORC format data. Well, you can bring all of that data into Snowflake as what we call semi-structured data. We're going to understand and parse that structure and let you use it natively. You can also put views on top of that so that any of your legacy SQL tools that don't understand Snowflake's special syntax for dealing with this data can just work with it as if it was, that structured relational data that you have in there. And this works, with similar performance characteristics to structured data and at that same kind of multi-petabyte scale that you can use with any other data inside Snowflake. I think one of my favorite things about Snowflake is the fact that there's very little work that you have to do that's kind of a chore or busy work or anything of that kind. Most of the time you're going to be spending is going to be loading your data or working with your data for an analysis. You don't have to install any software. You don't have to provision anything inside AWS. You don't have to do any of these kinds of things. You don't have to tune your data. You don't have to do lots of these kind of database maintenance tasks like vacuuming or anything else. One of the things that's also really cool because of the way we operate the service is actually you don't have to have any planned downtime. So we can push out new releases of Snowflake, and we do usually every week or couple of weeks. And you'll get those kind of new features in there. And unless you're really, really paying attention, you probably won't even notice that Snowflake has been upgraded. You won't have any downtime. Any queries that you have running will all complete successfully, and then your new queries will start running on the new version as we upgrade your user pools. So you really don't have to think too much, and you certainly don't have to do anything to do an upgrade of the Snowflake service. You're always using the latest and greatest, and it's completely our problem dealing with that. We don't have any downtime. You'll never log into Snowflake and see, there's a planned downtime window. That doesn't happen. We just upgrade the service without having any of that downtime. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today is other ways people are using Snowflake. So we talked a lot about how we kind of solve all these problems that traditional on-prem data warehouses do, and we've expanded out that definition with that semi-structured data, but there are a few other things that we see in the market as well. So a lot of people have data lake projects or data lake strategies where they think we'll load our data and then we'll kind of work out what we're going to do with it later. Well, actually, Snowflake can act as a really great data lake, and we see a lot of customers being really successful with this approach. Because we can load any of these semi-structured data formats, JSON, Parquet, Avro, ORC, we become a really good place to land all of that data in close to its original format, right? It's really easy to bring that data in, and it's really cheap to store that. So if you don't have any use cases for that data today, and a lot of data lake projects start with kind of collecting a bunch of data and then figuring out use cases and structuring it later on, it's really cheap to get started with Snowflake on this. You have that schema on read, you have that cheap storage, it's very easy to load all these different types of data in there. All of these things are things that you can do inside Snowflake. Now, you can also have, because we have full role-based access control, you get full governance on top of that data as well, which often is something that people have to add on to their data lake projects. Because we are a full SQL data warehouse, we have all the things you would expect from that, including ACID and transactional compliance. So if you do actually want to transform your data, you can do so in a transactional manner. We have that great feature that Mohammed mentioned earlier of doing data sharing. Now, we have customers who use this internally between different business units. They actually run separate snowflakes. It's not always required, but sometimes they do, and that lets you kind of do data sharing between it. But it also works for data sharing between your partner organizations. So we work with a number of our suppliers, and we also actually use data sharing to publish information to you. So every single Snowflake account gets information shared to it from Snowflake in the form of sample data that you can play around and do queries on, and also in terms of your billing information where we share that to your account so you know exactly how much the Snowflake service is costing you. We also do data sharing with some of our suppliers. So one of the things that Mohammed and I use, we use a thing called MindTickle. It teaches all about different new use cases and different ways people are using Snowflake. Well, they actually use data sharing to share with us information about how all of our employees are using that. So there's all these different kinds of data sharing use cases, both to your partner organizations and also to that you can get to and from your partners. Okay, so there's lots of these things. And with the new addition of replication, you can actually operate your kind of data lake in a global manner. So we have all the things that people traditionally think of for doing a data lake, as well as these kind of new capabilities that we bring to the table in addition to those that people traditionally think of. One of the things that we can do as well is we don't just have to load data into Snowflake, although we've talked a lot about that today. You can actually support external tables. We can go query that. We've added support for Hive Metastore integration so that we can actually populate the list of external tables based on that. And you can do SQL across all of these things, joining this data together. So your consumers, to them, it just looks like one cohesive set of data, even though actually some of it's inside Snowflake, some of it is external data out there. So you can do all of these things. When we talk about zero maintenance, again, we try and extend that even in these more complex scenarios where, because we have things like that Metastore integration, we can actually automate the ways in which we operate that. Same with things like materialized views on data. Those will get updated automatically by us as a service. You don't have to kind of manually go kick Snowflake and say, hey, go do those kinds of things. Another thing that we've seen a lot of people do is looking at security analytics. So we take data security and information security and the security of the Snowflake service very seriously. And one of the ways we do that is actually by using Snowflake itself to tell us about things that are unusual that are happening in the way the service is running. So what we see with people traditionally doing security analytics in the IT world is they have a number of problems where they're using a solution maybe that wasn't built for the cloud. And that causes them all kinds of problems when they try and operate in the cloud. It can be very expensive. It might not work as well as they would like it to. It may be difficult to map the kinds of hardware they were using on-premise to the kinds of hardware or virtual machines that are available inside the cloud. They may also have kind of problems with things like multi-tenancy where it just doesn't really work that way. When you also look at these kinds of security solutions, they're often quite expensive. And when you look at the pricing models for these, they're often based on like a per gigabyte cost or something of that kind. It gets very expensive if you're doing security analytics on a lot of data. Whereas Snowflake, as we've said, one of our things is about trying to make it as cheap as possible to bring in as much data as possible. So we're really on top of that kind of cost control. One of the other things that also you see with on-premise solutions or traditional legacy ones, it's very hard to scale the speed of them and the complexity of what you're doing without also scaling the storage. These two things are usually tied together and often quite interrelated. Well, because of our virtual warehouses, again, we don't really have that sort of problem. And then the ones that become more of a challenge for people, depending on what the technology they're using, is the difficulty in actually working with that data, the difficulty in the way that they are able to interact with that. And because they're not able to look at all of their security data, it limits their ability to guarantee the security of their service. So what do we do? Well, I kind of talked a little bit about how we solve some of these problems, and I think the cost-effective one, we really do try and be the cheapest possible service for the value we deliver. We really try and keep on top of that cost for you. The elastic ability of Snowflake is really fantastic. If I have the need to go back and do a big piece of security analysis on a lot of historic data because I found something that's kind of interesting now and I want to see more about what happened in the past, I can just kind of scale up the warehouses I'm using, go run those queries and still get my results very fast and only pay for the higher level of warehouse usage for the time I needed it. It's very easy for me to be able to do that. Because we have a full SQL engine that's designed for doing analytics, actually you can do all the kinds of analysis you want to do. You can write the most complex kind of queries and the complex kind of analysis you want to because you have the full power of all of Snowflake SQL behind you. In addition, you can connect up things like if you want to work with data science, all of those same integrations and ecosystem you've seen before for data warehousing, apply the same for security analytics. And because we support this semi-structured and structured data, we can work across all different types of security data you might be seeing inside the organization. So we have a product called Snow Alert. We built that partly based on our own use cases and partly based on what our customers wanted us to be able to do. Right now it's separate and is an open source project, but you'll see in the future some more of these things will be coming into the core Snowflake platform. And it lets us bring in all these different types of sources, particularly these ones relevant for the cloud, with your SaaS, IaaS, and so on and so forth. Lets you bring that data into Snowflake. Snow Alert will do automatic rules and processing and doing a lot of that kind of security analytics to produce interesting alerts, so you're just focusing on the things you need to pay attention to and not just the noise of data that can be out there in the security space. And then actually we integrate with a lot of other services. So internally we use Sigma for our BI layer, but actually you could use Looker or Tableau or other BI solutions as well to actually analyze these different types of security data and alerts that we make use of. So there's lots of these ways you can integrate with Snowflake as a platform, and Snow Alert is adding more and more capabilities in that security analytics space. And usually when customers adopt this, they can make a dramatic cost savings versus the platforms they were using before, simply because our pricing model is completely different and drastically cheaper than what's out there. So emphasizing on that cost savings, looking at a traditional SIEM service, a cloud-based one that wasn't really performing as well as we would like it to for us, that was about $800,000 worth of spend. The replacement doing inside Snowflake, about $86,000. So you can see like nearly a 10 times cost reduction in terms of what we're looking at. Particularly the storage cost, you'll see a lot in security data. Storage is a big part of it. There's a lot of security data out there. Generating 1.5 terabytes every single day of new data is just a big scale challenge in itself. But even with that, retaining all of that for a whole year, it's still only $27,000 worth of storage cost. With other solutions, that would be orders of magnitude more expensive. Compute then, also about $60,000. So we actually do analysis all the time. Every 15 minutes, we're looking for new things that are happening to generate new security incidents for our teams to go look at. And that's actually just running on a medium warehouse size. Now, our warehouses go from extra small, they double up in t-shirt sizes, all the way up to 4XL. So we've actually got plenty of compute scaling space left in our solution there. We're doing all of this stuff just on a medium warehouse today. So there's plenty of ability to scale that up. We talked a little bit about data sharing throughout this, but I think it's one of the most fascinating and kind of really interesting capabilities that are inside Snowflake. The way we do it, I think, is really exciting, and it offers so many benefits versus traditional approaches. So in the traditional approach to sharing data from your data warehouse or from other sources, you've got to run some sort of process, extract maybe some sort of file. Maybe that then has to be placed on like an FTP server, or maybe you have to have some developers build some sort of API that lets people get access to it. All of these things require time, complexity, they're difficult to build. With Snowflake, you can just publish that data set and you are done. You don't have to do anything else in the future either. So there's no data movement. As a data provider, I don't have to push, sync, pull, any of those things with my data. All of my data consumers always see the most up-to-date data all the time, just like all of my internal users do. As a data consumer, I don't have to do any sort of download, sync, or any other kind of process to have that available inside Snowflake. It's just instantly there, like another database that I can just query, join with my other data, anything else I want to do that. One of our customers that does this, Blackboard in the States, they run learning management systems for universities. So students use them to go to get class materials, tests, results, all of these kinds of things. Blackboard actually used data sharing as a way of publishing that information to those universities. So instead of them having to build a complex process for publishing just the information on just those students to each of those, they can actually share it straight out of Snowflake that they're using for their own analytics as well. So it becomes a really great kind of capability for them. If those universities themselves sign up with Snowflake, they can actually join that data against all of the other data they hold about those students. They can actually present a complete view of what they know about those students, not just from the data that Blackboard have, but also from the data they have in their own systems, in their own information. So it really gives a great capability to bring all of these things together. Why is it different to other systems? Well, there's only one copy of the data. We don't have to move data to do data sharing. Because of the way we've built that service, built on that centralized storage, we don't have to copy data to be able to make it shared and available to other users. This is a really great thing, and it's stored and controlled by that data provider. The natural consequence of this is that all the data is always live and fresh all the time. There's no sync process, there's no delays. If I do data sharing and I update my tables and then I look as a data reader, I get exactly the same information that's just been updated. They have the same kind of transaction integrity, the same real-time access that anyone internally would have to that data. The final thing is that if I, as a data provider, decide I no longer want to share data with you, and I revoke that, that takes effect immediately. Same as with the data syncing, there's no kind of extra process. They no longer have access to that data. I have complete control over which data people have access to, what their access rights are, and I can control that, revoke it at any time. We think data sharing is great today, but we want to actually be able to take that further. And one of the ways we're doing this is with the data exchange. And what we want to let people do is actually have a way inside the product where they can see different data sets that they might be able to get access to, and different organizations they may want to partner with to have more information available inside Snowflake. So it's integrated into the product. We're also looking at providing capabilities for doing monetization of data. So if you publish data on the data exchange, you can actually get money back from the consumers. We want to mediate that relationship and allow the ability to monetize, create new opportunities for new businesses for our customers. And we also want to be able to let people kind of try it out, see a little bit of what they're going to get to make sure it's going to be the right choice for them. Do you want to talk a little bit about the afternoon session,
Perfect.
Mohammed?
Yes, thank you, Duncan. So this afternoon we will demo Snowflake. So a simple demo to show you the simplicity of the tool and to show you that you need zero administration just to integrate your data and then query them with tools like Looker. Then we will talk about competitive landscape, show you why we are superior than our competitors today in the market, and of course open questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.